It comes much later, as opposed to the immediate recordings of the life of Jesus by his immediate followers. With the weight of the evidence we have the manuscripts and so forth. In addition, by the way, to the Greek manuscript, we started with the Greek manuscripts. Beyond that, there are other, let's call them cross-references. Say, well, I'm not so sure about the Greek. Well, what about others? There are, for example, translations. Christianity is a missionary religion, as is Islam. And from the very beginning, Jesus said you need to go out with the message of the gospel and tell the nations about me and about the gospel and the good news. And so he sent them out. And if you're going to the four corners of the earth, people need to know what you're saying. So you have to translate into their language. And very quickly, we begin to see that the Gospels were translated into Latin and Syriac, followed by Armenian, Georgian, Coptic, Ethiopic, and Gothic, some of which date to the 2nd and 3rd centuries, and the number of which, when you take these, the Latin, Syriac, Armenian, Georgian, Coptic, Ethiopic, and Gothic, there are over 15,000 manuscripts that we possess of these translations of the Gospels into these other languages. There are citations from the early church fathers. And the early fathers were prolific writers, and they quoted frequently from the New Testament. So often did they quote from the New Testament in their writings that were every Greek manuscript of the New Testament to be simply disappear from the face of the earth, we could reproduce all but a few verses of the New Testament simply from the writings of the early church fathers. Again, prior to the year AD 325, we have over 36,000 citations of books of the New Testament from Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, Clement of Alexandria, Origen, Tertullian, Hippolytus, Eusebius, etc. And since these lived prior to the 5th century, I say mainly between AD 90 and 160, their citations are very important. Again, if we had nothing here, simply take their writings and reproduce what we have here, all but just a few verses. And then thirdly, there are lectionaries. The Christians followed the example of the Jews in taking scripture writing and writing them into their liturgical material. As that liturgical has to do with their worship. As they would worship, they would have readings, and they would incorporate the scripture into those readings. And so this is a major part of that part of what they did. Now let's talk for just a minute about the reliability of the New Testament. And there's an old expression, to err is human, but to forgive is divine. To err is human, to forgive is divine. Leave off the latter part. We're not divine, but we are human and we do err. We do make mistakes. And as a result, until the invention of the printing press in the mid 15th century, or maybe the photocopier in the 20th century, until the reproduction of documents has always been susceptible to error for a number of reasons. Stop and think about this just for a minute. And I'm going to say the New Testament is not an exception, nor the Quran, but stop and think about if you were a scribe actually writing and copying these manuscripts. First of all, your eyes. I wear glasses. Maybe you didn't have glasses. Maybe you had astigmatism. You things were a little bit of a blur. Maybe your vision wasn't quite what it should be. Maybe it's late at night, you're just kind of blurring. Maybe you've got a sty in your eye. Or maybe it's not your eye, but your hearing. Maybe you're a scribe, you're in a scriptorium with a number of other scribes. You've got someone reading the text, and you're listening, and you write as you hear, but maybe your hearing is not that great, and you mishear something, or maybe the problem is with your hand and writing. You just kind of not that good penmanship, or maybe it's your memory. Maybe you've got a text and you're writing and you're going back and forth, and even in that process of back and forth, memory plays a role, and you can actually forget something, especially with an extended task of hour after